Hey everyone, welcome to Life Reflections. Today I'm sharing a life story that might just hit home for you. If you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button to join me for more moments that matter. Let's dive in.
I didn't grow up dreaming of marrying rich. I never fantasized about penthouses, champagne brunches, or diamond-studded dinner parties. I dreamed of creating, designing, building something meaningful. So when I moved to Chicago at 24 with nothing but a design degree, a half-broken laptop, and a cheap apartment above a deli, I wasn't chasing a fairy tale. I was chasing independence. Then I met Ethan. He walked into my life wearing worn jeans, an old Columbia hoodie, and a smile so disarming it could melt metal. We bumped into each other, literally, outside a bookstore. My latte spilled all over my sketchbook, and he offered to buy me a new one. That was our first conversation. No grand gestures. No pretenses. Just two strangers who couldn't stop laughing about coffee stains and bad first impressions. He was different. Not in the he likes jazz and owns a cat kind of way. I mean, Ethan didn't act like someone who came from serious money. No arrogance. No flashy watches or business talk. When I found out, 3 months into dating, that he was the heir to Carter and Sons properties, I was floored. And a little suspicious. "You really didn't know?" he asked once, amused. "No," I said, holding up my phone. Google doesn't work on people who wear hoodies and eat ramen with me on the floor. We fell hard. We moved fast. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. He met my friends. I met his world. And that's when things changed. I still remember the first time I stepped into the Carter family estate. Marble floors. Spiral staircases. A chandelier that probably cost more than my student loans. Ethan gripped my hand tighter as we entered, and I soon found out why. His mother, Victoria Carter, greeted me with a smile so cold it could have frozen fire. Her handshake was limp. Her eyes? Calculating. She looked at me like she was trying to determine the exact price tag on my thrift store dress. "So, you're Rachel," she said, sipping wine without breaking eye contact. "Yes," I smiled politely. "It's nice to meet you." She tilted her head, not smiling back. Charming. I don't remember much from that evening, except for the crushing realization that I didn't belong. The men talked deals and golf. The women whispered, eyeing my flat shoes and off-brand purse. Ethan tried to shield me, but even he couldn't ignore the stares, or his mother's ever-tightening grip on our relationship. When I found out I was pregnant with twins, Ethan cried. I did too. We stayed up that night talking about baby names, daycares, bedtime routines. He said he'd protect us no matter what. But Victoria wasn't having it. Suddenly, Ethan was different. Distant. Distracted. He was always on his phone, always saying everything's fine, while looking like the world was collapsing inside him. I chalked it up to stress. His mother, I told myself, would come around. She'd see how much we loved each other. She didn't. She saw me, and our unborn twins, as a threat. I later learned she saw the pregnancy as leverage I was using to trap Ethan. She was furious. She gave him an ultimatum: choose the family legacy, or choose me. He denied it, of course. Told me I was paranoid. That his mother couldn't control his decisions. Until she did. One morning, 2 weeks after I gave birth, I was feeding the twins in our tiny apartment when Ethan walked in. He looked like a ghost, sunken eyes, clenched jaw, shoulders stiff like stone. "We need to talk," he said. I knew. I knew before he even said it. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. "Can't do what?" "This. Us. I can't stay." I asked him if his mother had something to do with it. He didn't answer. He just said, We don't belong in the same world. I'm sorry. And then he walked out. He left behind 2 newborns. A woman who gave up her job, her comfort, her body, for love. He left us because his mother convinced him that being a Carter mattered more than being a father. That bloodlines and brand names were more important than bedtime stories and diaper changes. I didn't eat for days. I barely slept. I would sit on the floor of our living room, cradling my babies, wondering what I did wrong. I kept checking my phone, praying he'd text, say he made a mistake, say he was coming home. But silence was all I got. People love to talk about rock bottom like it's this clear-cut, defined moment. Mine wasn't. It was a slow sinking. 1,000 little heartbreaks stacking on top of each other until I couldn't feel anything except exhaustion. And yet, when I looked at my babies, when I saw their tiny fists reaching out to me, I knew giving up wasn't an option. Not for them. So I wiped my tears. Cleaned the dishes. Opened my laptop. And started looking for a job. But no one wanted to hire a freshly single mom with 2 infants and no childcare. Employers smiled politely and sent rejection emails. Some were more direct. You're incredibly qualified, Rachel, but we need someone fully available. I started freelancing. Interior design work. Late nights. Tiny paychecks. But I kept at it. I learned to feed twins with one hand while photoshopping mood boards with the other. And slowly, I found myself again. One night, while folding baby clothes, I noticed how ugly most baby outfits were. Either too pricey or too poorly made. I remembered how my mom used to sew clothes for me as a kid. So I dug up an old sewing machine and got to work. Just for fun, I posted a few pieces online. Then a friend ordered some. Then another. Then someone I didn't know messaged me. Do you take custom orders? I called the brand Bright Sprouts, because that's what my twins were to me, 2 tiny lights growing in the middle of all my darkness. It wasn't easy. I worked while the babies napped. Packed orders at midnight. Took product photos in my kitchen. But every sale felt like proof that I wasn't just surviving, I was building something. 6 months in, a mommy influencer shared my shop on Instagram. Orders flooded in. I cried on my bathroom floor, this time, from gratitude. A year later, Bright Sprouts was being stocked in boutiques across the country. I hired help. Moved into a bigger space. I wasn't rich, but I was free. And for the first time since Ethan left, I didn't think about him every day. Until I saw the text. Rachel, it's Ethan. I saw your interview on TV. Can we talk? The old me would have dropped everything. Run. Begged. Hoped. But the woman I'd become? She took a deep breath. Set the phone down. And smiled. Because the man who walked away for his legacy? He had no idea that I'd go on to build one of my own. You always hear the phrase, behind every powerful man is a strong woman. In my case, behind the man I loved was a woman so cold, so calculating, that she didn't just control his business decisions, she controlled his entire sense of self. Her name was Victoria Carter. To the outside world, she was elegance personified. Impeccably dressed. Calm. Charming. The kind of woman who threw charity galas and gave interviews about empowering women in business. But behind that mask of civility was a woman who saw people like me, women without trust funds, last names, or designer handbags, as threats, not humans. She didn't raise a son. She raised a legacy. And Ethan? He wasn't ready to fight her. He was sweet. Kind. Loyal, to a fault. But he had lived his entire life in her shadow, and no one escapes a shadow like that unscarred. From the first moment I met Victoria, she sized me up like I was an outfit she didn't want but was forced to wear in public. Her handshake was soft, her smile sharper than glass. "Rachel," she said with perfect enunciation, like my name was foreign in her mouth. "Ethan tells me you're a designer." "How creative?" The pause before creative told me everything I needed to know. In her world, creative was a polite euphemism for unstable, unserious, and most importantly, unfit. That night, at the Carter family gala, a sea of pearls, champagne flutes, and white tablecloth tension, I saw the full power she held. People didn't speak to her. They reported to her. Her approval was currency. Her judgment, a death sentence. I was a ghost at that party. The staff treated me better than the guests. I tried to blend in, smile, make polite conversation. But every time I reached for Ethan's hand, I could feel his mother's stare burning into my skin. Later that night, when I told him I felt uncomfortable, he brushed it off with a nervous laugh. "She just needs time," he said. But what I heard was, "She runs the show." Over time, her disapproval grew bolder. She didn't hide it anymore. When she learned I was pregnant, her first reaction wasn't joy or even disappointment. It was strategy. She invited us to brunch at her downtown penthouse. It was just the three of us, a rare setup, and I should have known then what it was. A power play. The food was untouched. The air, icy. "I suppose congratulations are in order," she said, sipping her espresso. "Twins, you said?" I nodded, unsure how to read her tone. Victoria set down her cup and leaned in, her eyes piercing mine like a sniper's scope. "You should know, Rachel, that Ethan has a future most men only dream of. A legacy built on decades of sacrifice. And that future doesn't come with a woman who pulls him off track." "I'm not pulling him off track," I said softly. "You're derailing a dynasty," she said without missing a beat. Ethan sat there, silent. He didn't defend me. He didn't say a word. He just sat, looking down at his plate like a scolded child. That moment changed everything. I realized she didn't just dislike me. She didn't see me. Not as a person. Not as a mother. Not even as her son's partner. To her, I was a problem to be solved. And Ethan? He wasn't strong enough to stop her. She began her campaign slowly. Calls to Ethan at all hours. Family emergencies that conveniently never included me. Subtle remarks that turned into direct commands. And Ethan, sweet, soft Ethan, started to bend. First, it was small things. He canceled doctor appointments. Skipped baby name planning. Then it became bigger. He didn't come to my ultrasound. He missed the baby shower. His excuses were always the same. Mom needed me. She wants me more involved at the firm. I promise I'll make it up to you. But he never did. I saw the fear in his eyes every time her name came up. Victoria didn't need to shout to dominate him. Her expectations alone were louder than any scream. One night, I found him sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "Ethan," I said, kneeling in front of him. "What's going on?" He looked up, eyes hollow. "I love you. But I don't know if I can fight her." "She's not your boss," I whispered. "She's your mother." "No," he said quietly. "She's everything. My life, my future, the company, they all go through her." And in that sentence, I lost him. Because deep down, he had already chosen. He just didn't have the courage to say it out loud. Victoria didn't need to kick me out herself. She just had to pull the strings and let her puppet do it for her. A week after our twins were born, Ethan walked into our apartment and left without ever picking them up again. Because to Victoria, those babies weren't family, they were liabilities. And to Ethan, saying no to her meant risking everything he'd been raised to believe he couldn't live without. I wanted to hate her. But more than anything, I pitied her. She had all the power, all the money, all the control, but no warmth. No empathy. She didn't just sacrifice relationships for her dynasty. She destroyed them preemptively, like weeds before they could grow. And Ethan? He let her. He let the woman who taught him business crush the only thing that ever made him human, his capacity to love without strings. He left us for an empire. But what he didn't know, what she never saw coming, was that I would build one of my own. Not with money. Not with status. With courage. With resilience. With 2 tiny hearts as my motivation. And while Victoria sat in her castle, guarding a throne no one asked to share, I turned my pain into purpose. And became everything they said I couldn't be. There are moments in life that split you into 2 people, the one you were before, and the one you are after. The morning Ethan walked out was one of those moments. I remember the sound of the door closing more than I remember his words. It wasn't loud. It didn't slam. But it echoed through our 1-bedroom apartment like a thunderclap. He didn't even look back. Just walked out, leaving behind 2 tiny humans wrapped in hospital blankets and a woman who didn't know whether to scream or collapse. I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, the twins asleep in their bassinets. It was quiet. Too quiet. And that's when it hit me, he's really not coming back. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's quiet. It seeps in through the cracks. I didn't cry like in the movies. I didn't scream into pillows. I just stopped moving. My body functioned on autopilot. Feed the twins. Change them. Hold them when they cried. Repeat. I went days without showering. Weeks without speaking to anyone outside of short, awkward grocery store exchanges. People texted. Called. Asked how I was doing. I ignored them. What was I supposed to say? Oh, I'm fine. Just trying to figure out how to afford diapers since my billionaire ex abandoned us. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the loneliness. It wasn't even the bills piling up on the counter. It was the silence. The silence that filled the apartment once Ethan was gone. No more footsteps down the hall. No more soft hum of his voice while he worked late at the kitchen table. No more laughter. Just white noise, interrupted by the occasional cry from the twins, the only sounds reminding me I was still alive. I didn't have a job to return to. I'd left my position at a small interior design firm during the 3rd trimester. My boss had been understanding, at first, but a month before the twins came, she emailed me. We had to fill your role. But if anything opens up, we'll let you know. They never did. So there I was. Alone. No income. No support. A fridge with half a gallon of milk and some wilted spinach. And 2 babies who depended on me for everything. I pawned my favorite sketchbooks. Sold furniture on Facebook Marketplace. I even tried applying for part-time jobs, but every interview ended the same way. We love your resume, but you're a single mom of twins? That's a tough schedule. One manager, a woman, actually asked, how will you focus on work if your babies are sick? It felt like the world had already decided I was a liability. I started skipping meals so I could afford formula. I slept in spurts, 20 minutes here, an hour there, while the twins napped. I nursed my post-birth body alone. The stitches. The swelling. The crushing fatigue. There were nights I stood in the shower, water running cold, whispering, "You can't break now. You can't break now." Like a mantra. Like a prayer. But breaking felt inevitable. Until one night, one very dark, very quiet night, I hit a wall. I had just put the twins to sleep after hours of rocking, bouncing, pacing. My back ached. My wrists throbbed. I sank onto the floor of the nursery and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time since Ethan left, I whispered the words I was too scared to admit out loud. I can't do this. I said it again. Louder. I can't do this. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed. Not quiet tears. Not polite crying. I sobbed so hard I shook. I wept for the future I lost. The woman I used to be. The man I thought he was. I wept because I was 26, and I felt like my life had ended before it ever really began. And then, over the sound of my own heartbreak, I heard it. A baby's whimper. I crawled across the room and looked into the crib. My daughter was staring up at me, her tiny mouth twisted into a sleepy pout. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, the pain paused. Because in her eyes, there was no judgment. No shame. No disappointment. Just trust. Raw, innocent, beautiful trust. She didn't care that I didn't have money. Or a husband. Or my life together. She just needed me. And in that moment, I realized, I might not be enough for the world, but I am everything to them. That was the shift. That was the night I stood up, wiped my face, and told the universe. You threw everything at me. But I'm still here. From that point on, I stopped focusing on what I lost, and started building with what I had. I couldn't afford daycare. So I made their nap times my work hours. I couldn't afford Wi-Fi. So I camped out at coffee shops with free internet. I couldn't afford self-pity. So I got creative. I reached out to a former client from my design days and offered to consult on her nursery setup, for free. She loved the results and paid me anyway. That led to a referral. And another. I started designing remotely, sending out ideas via email, editing photos and free apps at 2 a.m. with a baby in one arm. Still, money was tight. So I cut everything unnecessary. No takeout. No Netflix. I sold clothes, canceled subscriptions, learned how to coupon like a pro. I watched YouTube videos on sleep training, budgeting, and freelancing. I taught myself how to sew again. Because even though I was surviving, barely, I wanted something more. A dream. A future. A way out. That way out would eventually become Bright Sprouts, but I didn't know it then. All I knew was that rock bottom wasn't a place. It was a choice. And I was done living there. I don't remember the exact day I stopped crying. It wasn't dramatic. No thunderclap epiphany. No power anthem playing in the background. It was more like this slow, stubborn flicker inside me that refused to die out, even when everything around me felt dim. I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by piles of unfolded laundry, half-drunk bottles of formula, and the soft hum of the twins breathing in their crib. It was past midnight. My body ached. My eyes burned. And for once, I wasn't sobbing. I wasn't thinking about Ethan. Or Victoria. Or what might have been. I was thinking about onesies. Specifically, how every single one I owned either shrunk after the first wash or had the softness of a sandpaper towel. Some were cute but ridiculously overpriced. Others were affordable but stretched, tore, or looked like something a 1950s cartoon would put on a baby. And that's when it hit me. Why not make my own? I laughed at first. Loud. Tired. Delirious. I hadn't touched a sewing machine in years. Since high school, actually. My mom, before cancer took her, taught me how to stitch doll clothes at the kitchen table. I still remembered the rhythm. The hum of the pedal. The way she used to say, creating something with your own hands, Rachel, is its own kind of magic. I didn't believe in magic anymore. But I did believe in survival. The next morning, I went downstairs to see Miss Janine, my retired neighbor with silver curls and an entire apartment that smelled like lavender and lemon tea. She was kind, nosy in the best way, and often left baked goods outside my door when the twins wouldn't stop crying. She opened the door wearing a housecoat and an eyebrow raised. "You okay, honey?" I nodded. "I was wondering, do you still have your old sewing machine?" She blinked, then smiled like I'd just told her I wanted to learn ballroom dancing. "In the closet. You want it?" That afternoon, I carried up a dusty but perfectly functional Brother sewing machine and placed it on the dining table next to a half-eaten PB&J sandwich. That night, after putting the twins to sleep, I pulled out an old cotton sheet and started cutting. It wasn't pretty. My stitches were crooked. The fabric was too thick. But when I slipped that makeshift onesie on my daughter, she smiled in her sleep, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. I posted a photo of the twins in their little outfits on my Instagram. I didn't think much of it, just a sleepy mom documenting survival. But then a friend commented, "OMG, did you make those? I'd totally buy one." And then another. And another. That night, I stayed up Googling everything. How to start a handmade baby clothing shop. How to open an Etsy store. Best fabric for infant skin. Can you start a business with $50? The answer to that last one? Apparently, yes, if you're desperate enough. Every spare dollar I had went into thread, snaps, soft organic cotton I ordered in bulk from a discount supplier. I cut fabric while the twins napped. I sewed between feedings. I used old gift bags and tissue paper to package my first orders. I even hand-drew thank you notes with crayons because I didn't have a printer. I called the brand Bright Sprouts. Because that's what my kids were to me, 2 sprouts pushing through the concrete. 2 tiny reasons I kept going. And, maybe, a reminder that I could grow something too. I opened an Instagram account and posted behind-the-scenes photos, my messy sewing table, a stack of pastel onesies, the twins modeling their latest outfits with gummy smiles. I joined parenting groups online and introduced myself without selling anything at first. "Hi, I'm Rachel, single mom of twins, former designer, now trying to stay sane and create cute baby stuff while covered in spit up. Be kind." Moms responded. Turns out, there's something powerful about honesty. About showing up raw and real and unfiltered. They rooted for me. They followed. Some bought. Others shared. And slowly, Bright Sprouts went from a late-night distraction to a real business. But it wasn't easy. There were moments I doubted everything. When a customer canceled an order after I'd already cut the fabric. When a onesie tore at the seam and I had to refund it with money I didn't have. When I sewed through my finger at 2 a.m. and sobbed into a burp cloth. I questioned myself constantly. Who did I think I was? A broke single mom in a tiny apartment with no help, no funding, no fancy marketing plan. Just thread, coffee, and a deadline. But every time I wanted to quit, I looked at my twins, giggling in their handmade outfits, and remembered, this is for them. And for me. Because I wasn't just making clothes. I was sewing back together the pieces of myself that Ethan and Victoria tried to rip apart. Every stitch said, "You didn't break me." Every package sent out the door was a tiny revolution. A soft, sweet rebellion. One day, a popular mom blogger commented on my page. "Your story is incredible. I'd love to feature you." I reread the message 10 times. Then screamed into a pillow so I wouldn't wake the twins. A week later, the blog went live. Thousands of views. Dozens of new followers. Orders doubled. Then tripled. I couldn't keep up. I begged Miss Janine to help fold baby leggings. She agreed, for payment in brownies. I watched as the number of customers grew. Not just moms, but aunts, grandparents, even dads. They didn't just buy the clothes, they believed in them. In me. I wasn't rich. I wasn't stable. But I was doing something I had never done before. Building. And for the first time since Ethan left, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I was winning. Not because I had money. Not because I had gone viral. But because I had taken the pain they left me with and turned it into something beautiful. Something mine. The first viral moment didn't come with fireworks. It came with a notification. @Mom Mode Daily mentioned you in a post. I stared at the screen in disbelief. That couldn't be right. The Mom Mode Daily? The parenting page with over 1 million followers? The one whose every post got thousands of shares and even more comments from moms, dads, and the occasional grandmother who learned to use Instagram just to like baby pictures? I clicked it with shaking hands. There it was. A flat lay of one of my handmade baby rompers, soft sage green with hand-stitched detail, placed beside a wooden teether and a sprig of eucalyptus. Minimal, elegant, exactly how I always imagined my brand could look, if I ever had a real budget. But somehow, they made my $3 fabric look like it belonged in a designer boutique. The caption read, "We've fallen in love with this small mom-owned business at Bright Sprouts Baby. Ethically made, buttery soft fabrics, and a story that'll make you root for her. Go support a real one." Yellow heart. My heart stopped. I dropped my phone, screamed into the nearest burp cloth, then picked it up again and checked the shop. Orders, 73. Then it refreshed, 91. Then, 137. By the end of the day, 310. I hadn't made 300 items in total up to that point. I sat down on the floor, surrounded by a basket of unfolded laundry and my laptop with 5 open tabs, shipping labels, thread wholesalers, Canva, Etsy messages, and a half-typed blog post. My twins were asleep, drooling onto the exact onesies now being reshared all over social media. It was happening. After months of grinding through the exhaustion, rejection, and invisible labor of single motherhood, Bright Sprouts had sprouted, wildly. But success wasn't the relief I thought it would be. At first, it was terrifying. I wasn't ready. I didn't have stock. I didn't have help. I didn't even have enough cardboard mailers. I wrapped packages in brown paper grocery bags and tied them with leftover yarn. I begged Miss Janine to help me pack during nap time. I printed shipping labels at the library down the block because my old printer jammed every 5 pages. But we made it work. My apartment transformed overnight into a mini fulfillment center. Fabric bolts stood like columns in the hallway. Thread spools spilled from every drawer. The dining table became my sewing station. The couch held finished orders. And my heart? It held something it hadn't in a long time, belief. I was finally being seen. Not as the girl Ethan left. Not as the poor thing people pitted at the grocery store. But as a builder. A businesswoman. A mother creating something out of nothing, with grit, heart, and not enough coffee. The flood of orders didn't slow down. Bloggers started reaching out. Boutique owners emailed asking if I offered wholesale. A local parenting magazine requested an interview. Every day brought something new. A mom in Portland sent photos of her baby in my Sprout Bloom romper, the first design I ever sewed. A customer in Atlanta messaged, "I haven't seen this level of care in baby clothes since my grandmother made them." A single dad from Denver left a review that made me cry, "My daughter has sensory issues. Your fabric is the only thing she lets me put on her." I read those messages between midnight diaper changes and 6 a.m. coffee chugs. Each one refueled me more than sleep ever could. And then came the biggest moment yet. The Today Show called. No, I'm not joking. Some associate producer named Megan left a voicemail on my business number, the free Google line I'd barely set up, asking if I was available for a possible feature on inspirational small businesses. I called her back. Immediately. 3 weeks later, I was sitting on a stool, lights beaming, makeup done by someone who definitely knew what contouring meant, and answering questions in front of a national morning audience. The host smiled and said, "You're not just a mom or a business owner, you're a movement. What do you want people to take away from your story?" I blinked, steadied my breath, and said, "That sometimes, being left behind is the best thing that ever happened to you. I built this brand for my babies, and for the version of me who thought she had nothing left." That line ended up clipped and shared across TikTok, Instagram, and Pinterest. I watched strangers stitch their own stories to it. Other moms. Other survivors. People who had been left, overlooked, underestimated, all nodding along to my words. I wasn't just selling baby clothes anymore. I was building belonging. Bright Sprouts grew faster than I could keep up. I hired my first seamstress, then my second. I rented a small studio space with better lighting and actual workspace. I launched a new collection, Rooted and Rising. It sold out in 2 hours. Within a year, I went from packaging onesies in brown paper bags to signing a wholesale contract with Three Little Oaks, a boutique chain that stocked eco-friendly children's brands across the U.S. They called my line the soul of small batch craftsmanship with the storytelling of a mother's heart. I cried. Again. But not out of grief. Not out of fear. Out of pride. Because I had done this. Me. The woman Ethan once said didn't fit into his world. The girl Victoria Carter looked at like a charity case. I didn't just find my footing. I built a foundation, for my kids, for myself, and for every woman who's ever been told she's too emotional, too fragile, too alone to succeed. Bright Sprouts wasn't just a brand anymore. It was my roar. And every romper, every stitch, every care tag attached to a newborn's first outfit, it all whispered the same truth. You can rise from anything. The morning Ethan saw me on TV, the world didn't stop, but his did. He was in the Carter Tower conference room, seated at the far end of a glass table surrounded by tailored suits and forced smiles. They were discussing some luxury condo expansion in Dallas, square footage, demographics, marble countertop finishes. He wasn't really listening. He hadn't really listened in months. Then someone in the room, a young intern, ironically, said, "Hey, is that your ex on Good Morning America?" Ethan looked up. Confused. Annoyed. Then curious. There I was. Smiling across from the host, radiant in a soft cream blouse I thrifted and a blazer that hid the dark circles I still sometimes carried from 2 a.m. feedings. "So Rachel, your story has inspired thousands of mothers. From being left with newborn twins to building Bright Sprouts into a national brand, how did you do it?" I paused on screen, then smiled, that quiet, knowing smile he hadn't seen in years. Honestly? I didn't think I could. But when you're abandoned with nothing but 2 hungry babies and your own heartbeat, you find a way. I didn't need saving. I needed a sewing machine. The room in Carter Tower fell awkwardly silent. Ethan's ears rang. On screen, the segment cut to footage of my kids laughing in a sun-drenched field, wearing matching Bright Sprouts rompers. Then back to me, laughing softly as I explained how I sewed prototypes on my dining table and shipped the first 200 orders using brown paper bags and borrowed stamps. Ethan leaned forward, transfixed. The host continued. You've been featured in Forbes, landed contracts with multiple retailers, and opened your own flagship location in Chicago. That's incredible. And then came the line that would slice Ethan open. I built everything from scratch after the man I loved walked out. And the most powerful part? I never needed him to come back. Ethan flinched like he'd been slapped. Because for the first time in years, maybe ever, he saw me not as the quiet girl who once blushed when his mother interrogated her at brunch, not as the woman curled up on a couch sobbing after he left, but as a woman who had moved on without him. He stared at the screen long after the segment ended. That night, he didn't go home. He didn't meet his fiancée. Yes, Victoria had since arranged a more suitable match, a polished heiress with a law degree and zero emotional risk. He drove around aimlessly. Past neighborhoods he hadn't visited in years. Past the old apartment where I used to live. Past the coffee shop where we first met. And then, like a man possessed, he parked outside my boutique. Bright Sprouts. The name alone made his throat tighten. He sat there in his sleek German car, staring through the glass at the display window, a baby mannequin in a handmade romper next to a hand-lettered sign, soft starts for strong futures. He walked in. The space smelled like lavender and fresh cotton. Sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains. Fabric bolts lined the back wall. A mother with a stroller flipped through hangers. A young employee smiled and said, "Can I help you?" He shook his head. Left without a word. Because he wasn't ready. Not yet. But he couldn't unsee it now. Couldn't unknow what he'd lost. For the next 3 days, Ethan barely slept. He kept watching the clip. Rewinding. Pausing when I smiled. Watching the way my eyes lit up when I spoke about building a future. How my voice no longer trembled the way it did when I'd once begged him to stay. He texted. Once. "Rachel. I saw you on TV. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. 3 days later, he showed up at my house. Not the tiny apartment he left me in, the home I now owned. Bright windows. Clean white walls. A swing on the front porch, where my kids like to sit and make up stories about cloud shapes. I opened the door. My kids were at school. I knew it was him before I even looked. He stood there in a pressed navy suit, holding nothing. Not flowers. Not an apology. Just regret. "Hi," he said softly. I leaned against the doorframe. "What are you doing here?" "I saw you," he said. "On TV." I nodded. So did a few million other people. He blinked. "You look happy." "I am happy." He shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know." "What didn't you know?" I asked. My voice was calm, cool, practiced. He looked at the porch floor, then back at me. "That you'd become this. That you didn't need me." I raised an eyebrow. "Ethan. I didn't need you then. You just weren't brave enough to believe that." He sighed. "I made a mistake." "Yes," I said simply. "You did. I didn't know how strong you were. I listened to my mother. I was scared." I gave a small, pitying smile. "And you think I wasn't?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. "I thought I was protecting my future," he whispered. "But I gave it up the second I walked away from you." I looked at him, really looked. The man in front of me wasn't the confident golden boy I once fell for. He looked thinner. Tired. Haunted by choices he couldn't undo. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "I don't cry over you. I don't check the door hoping you'll walk back through it. Because while you were building your mother's empire, I built my own. And it's better. Not because it's successful, but because it's mine." He nodded. Silent. Soaking in every word. "I don't want anything from you, Ethan," I continued. "Not money. Not closure. Not an apology. I already closed that chapter. You're just a character in it. I just needed to say I'm sorry, he said. Even if it's too late. It is. I paused. Let the silence stretch. Then I stepped back. Take care of yourself. And I closed the door. Ethan stood there for a long time. He didn't knock again. He didn't cry. He just stood. The wind picking up his coat, rustling the edge of the doormat where my kids had written "Welcome home" in chalk. But this wasn't his home anymore. He turned. Walked down the steps. Got into his car. And drove back to the Carter estate, a house with 30-foot ceilings and no warmth. A place where chandeliers sparkled but no one ever laughed. Where he had everything, except meaning. He sat at the grand piano, untouched for years, and for the first time, allowed the grief to come. Because he hadn't just lost me. He had lost the only version of himself that had ever been free. There's a moment that happens, a quiet, irreversible moment, when the past no longer hurts. It doesn't haunt. It doesn't whisper. It simply becomes background noise. Mine came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The twins were at school. My assistant had just left after organizing the studio's new fabric swatches. The boutique was closed for inventory. The house was silent except for the rain tapping against the window like an old friend checking in. I was sitting on the floor of my office, surrounded by drawings of the upcoming Bright Sprouts collection, bold florals, earthy tones, soft textures. My coffee had gone cold. My inbox was full of partnership requests and a draft of a feature from Parents magazine sat open on my laptop. And still, I felt still. Not overwhelmed. Not proud. Not afraid. Just still. It had taken me years to get here. I didn't arrive at peace quickly or painlessly. I had clawed my way through exhaustion, stitched my future with trembling hands, and cried over invoices and sick kids and people who ghosted me when I needed them most. But now, I was here. Whole. I got up, walked to the mirror, and caught a glimpse of myself. Not the girl Ethan once loved. Not the woman Victoria dismissed. Not the ghost of someone who used to beg for scraps of validation. This woman wore soft denim and no makeup. Her curls were undone. Her posture relaxed. There was no fire in her eyes, only clarity. I smiled. Not for the camera. Not for customers. Just for me. Later that week, a reporter came to interview me for a piece on female founders. She asked all the standard questions: how did Bright Sprouts start? What advice would you give to other moms? But then she paused, leaned forward, and asked one I didn't expect. Do you ever wish things had gone differently? That he had stayed? I didn't blink. No, I said simply. She tilted her head. Really? Not even for your kids to grow up with their father? I looked down at my hands, then back at her, steady. My kids have me. They've seen what it looks like when someone refuses to give up. When someone chooses growth over bitterness. They don't need a man to complete their family. They need truth, safety, and love. And they have all three. She nodded slowly, scribbling her notes. I continued. Being abandoned didn't destroy me. It stripped me of what wasn't mine to begin with. It forced me to find my own foundation. I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. Stronger. Smarter. Softer in the right ways, tougher in the ones that matter. She didn't ask another question for a long time. I knew then that my story wasn't just about sewing clothes or raising twins. It was about agency. About refusing to be defined by what others walked away from. People often say, everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that. Some things are cruel. Some things break us. But I do believe in what we do with the pain. I took mine and wove it into something beautiful. Bright Sprouts is now stocked in 17 stores nationwide. We donate 10% of profits to shelters for single mothers. We offer job training to women who need a fresh start. The walls of my studio are covered with handwritten thank you notes and drawings from customers' kids, stick figure families in colorful onesies. And every once in a while, when the orders slow and the chaos quiets, I take a breath and sit with the version of me that once didn't think she'd make it. I tell her, "You were never weak. You were just tired. And still, you kept going. I'm proud of you." That's the message I want other women to hear. Not be strong. Not move on. But this. You are allowed to break. But you are not required to stay broken. You can be the girl who was left behind and the woman who built something no one can take away. You can be your own rescue story. I didn't need Ethan to come back. I didn't need Victoria's approval. I didn't need a perfect roadmap or a wealthy investor. All I needed was a reason. And two tiny ones smiled at me every morning. Weeks later, I sat on the park bench while my twins played tag with their friends. The sun warmed my shoulders. A woman I didn't know sat down next to me, holding a baby wrapped in a Bright Sprouts swaddle. "You're Rachel, right?" I smiled. "Yes." I just wanted to say, "Your story got me through a really dark time." I looked at her baby, then at her tired eyes, soft voice, the fragile bravery I knew too well. "I was left, too," she continued. "When I was pregnant. I thought I'd never come out of it. But then I saw your video. I watched it on repeat. And I thought, if she can do it, maybe I can, too." My chest swelled. My eyes welled. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You can," I said. "You already are." She nodded, wiping her eyes. We sat in silence, watching our kids laugh in the grass. And in that moment, under an open sky, I felt it. Not closure. Not justice. Not even victory. Just freedom. Because I had finally become the woman I needed most the day he left. And now? She wasn't going anywhere.
That's it for today's story on Life Reflections. I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or a story of your own. If you enjoyed this, give a like and subscribe to keep the reflections coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.